Hi guys, welcome back. There's a common strategy that employers use to avoid accountability for their actions and to manipulate others, sometimes even us, into believing we're the problem. So we'll shut up and go away. DARVO. I was familiar with the strategy, but I didn't know it had a name until I was at Rich Prue's channel this week checking out a couple of his videos, and I ran across it in the comments section. And by the way, for those of you who haven't found Rich yet, I'll leave a link in the description so you can check him out. He's a former EEOC investigator, and now he does videos on YouTube to help employees like us navigate and understand the EEOC process. So now back to DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender roles. They deny our allegations by claiming they didn't do anything wrong. They attack us, our performance, conduct, credibility, and character, anything they can to try to put us on the defensive, so we'll talk about that instead of their actions. And finally, they try to flip the roles by making themselves out to be the victim and us the offender. Sometimes employers use these tactics from the beginning, even during the informal process, like my boss did. But if they don't show up there, you can be sure they will once EEOC gets involved. When they DARVO us, it can be tempting to DARVO them right back. But all that does is escalate the conflict, and it could even end up making us look like the bullies. A better approach is to stay calm. This is the #1 rule of EEOC Fight Club. It's hard to pull off, but we have to find a way to do it anyway. Point out the facts, with documentation if we can, because facts and evidence are what wins the EEOC cases. When my boss tried to deny that she'd done anything wrong by saying that I never asked for reasonable accommodation, I could have snarked back with a, yeah, right, or something equally witty that would have just made me look like a jerk. Instead, I just stuck to the facts. I'd asked for reasonable accommodation a bunch of times, in writing, and I had the documentation to prove it. We should explain to EEOC how their DARVO tactics are affecting us, because one of the surest ways for EEOC to recognize manipulation is by looking at how it affects us. Like when my boss claimed that I had never asked for reasonable accommodation, even though I'd asked a bunch of times. That made me feel really helpless because it felt like there was nothing I could have done that she would have recognized as a valid request. We should also remind EEOC that anybody would be affected by these kinds of tactics. My investigator got it, and so did my AJ at my hearing later. Investigators and AJs are good at recognizing all kinds of manipulations, including DARVO. They're trained for it and experienced with it. But not all of them get it, and if you think the ones working your case don't, there are a couple things you can try to help open their eyes. The first is a good thing to do whenever we're dealing with EEOC. Show them our good faith by being honest, answering their questions, giving them all the information they ask for, and being reasonable and empathetic throughout the process. For example, when my investigator asked NASA for a 3-day extension for me so that I could attend a family funeral out of state, and NASA said no, I could have railed at my investigator about how slimy that was. But instead I just said, thanks for trying. And I moved immediately on to trying to figure out how I was going to meet that deadline and still be there for my family. I think that showed my investigator that I'm not the type of person who freaks out over nothing. I'm a reasonable person with reasonable concerns. And at EEOC, being reasonable is credibility. And once we have that, EEOC is a lot more open to hearing our concerns, whatever they may be. Another good thing to do with DARVO especially is to call it out by name, using our own words, of course. My boss keeps doing that DARVO thing of denying, attacking, and pretending to be the real victim. The more specific, documented examples we can give them, the better. And when we have more than one example of these behaviors, we want to highlight the patterns, because the patterns are going to be harder for our employer to deny. For example, one of my boss's big patterns was denying that she did anything wrong. And like I said, most of the time she did that by denying that I even asked for reasonable accommodation. But sometimes she said the only reason I filed a complaint was to make an easy buck, or to escape punishment for some infraction that she'd never even documented, or because I was just angry that I didn't get my way about reasonable accommodation. Whatever she said, the common theme was she did nothing wrong. The problem was me. And I could lay out her patterns of attacking me and pretending to be the victim in a similar way. In hearings and in court, a good employment attorney will know how to expose and highlight your employer's DARVO behavior. In the meantime, I hope what I've shared today will help you see it, so you can make sure that EEOC sees it too. See you guys in the next one. Till then, take care and hang in.